Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. This is Umaira Said, Lecture Times Institute. Today I am here with the lecture number 6 of English Comprehension and Composition, and topic for discussion today is the listening and its type. As in the previous lectures, we discussed about the communication, and we discussed that there are basically 4 types of communication: listening, speaking, reading and writing. We discussed that the 2 are active and the 2 are passive, and listening is one of the passive skill. Why it is passive? As we discussed as well, that because we are bound to listen to the other, what one is speaking is said to be the listening. Francis Bacon, who was the famous medieval lawyer, he was a famous essayist, he was the famous prose writer, he once said that reading makes a full man, writing makes an exact man, conference makes a ready man, whereas I believe that listening is one thing which makes a trustworthy man, because the more you listen, the more you speak, the more you listen, the more you have get a knowledge and more you get the enlightenment. According to the general perception that in our whole day we mostly spend 53% in listening and 16% of speaking. Now your question will be very much valid if any one of you ask me, ma'am, if we are listening 53% and one is speaking 16%, then why it is 53%? The reason is that we do not only listen the words of speaking words, we listen so many things like the noises, like the horn, the chirping birds, and so many other things which are included in the listening as well. So that makes the complete 53%. Pick out your pencil and the paper so that we may note down the important points. Now jump into the difference between the listening and the hearing. The number 1 point is difference. When you sit in the class, your teacher generally said to you, listen me carefully. Why she or he says to you, listen me carefully? Because listen is just to give the attention to the spoken words. So listening is that whatever you are listening, the sounds, you just give them the perception, and this understanding that is said to be listening. Listen is when you are attentive, when you are mentally present, when you are giving more attention to the speaker is said to be listening. When it is about hearing, hearing is just you are mentally sometimes present somewhere else, but your ear are not giving attention to the spoken word is said to be hearing. And there are more students in the class who used to give less ear to the spoken words of the teachers, and sometimes they said, ma'am, we do not understand and do not give us the response. This is said to be the listening and hearing. So let's move to the types of listening, which are very much important. I have written few types of the listening, which is appreciative listening, empathetic listening, active listening and the critical listening. Now discuss it one by one. What is appreciative listening? As the word appreciation is very much obvious and explicit, that the appreciation it means that when you listen for the sake of pleasure, for the sake of understanding, for the sake of amusing yourself is the appreciative listening. Listening to the radio, listening to the television, sometimes listening to the phone calls of your beloved, your friends, it is an appreciative listening. The second most important is empathetic listening. When you listen to the motivational speakers to persuade someone or to be persuaded by someone others is said to be persuasive listening. Many of you are familiar with Maulana Tariq Jamil, Qasim Ali Shah, Muniba Mizari and many other motivational speakers, indigenous motivational speakers, and we pay heed to listen to them. So because their words, like sometimes we diffuses or into our hearts, so that is said to be the empathetic listening. Active listening, this type of listening which is done into the classroom for the sake of understanding something. Those students who are the DPT, HND and those who listen to the major subjects, they give full attention so that they may understand all the formulas or the bone description is said to be active listening. But I cannot say this confident about the English, because sometimes the English becomes so much burden for all of you. So next is critical listening. Critical listening is particularly for the sake of understanding or evaluating. When you scale someone or when you judge someone, that is said to be the critical listening. And these are the some basic types of the listening. The next most important thing which we discuss today is the stages of listening. Write down stages of the listening. The number 1 stage of the listening which we have to face difficulty in comprehension is said to be sound and the accent difficulties. As we are familiar that the Asian accent of a speaking language is entirely different from the spoken English of Americans or some European or other countries. Some speak the language and some speak the dialects. Like the speaking Saraiki accent is like different in Multan, different in Dijikhan, different in Muzaffargarh, and entirely different in the Bahawalpur. So these are the dialects, but the particular language is Saraiki. Sound difficulty means that sometimes we may unable to understand the accent or the spoken words properly to the another person. There are many reasons because of the barriers, maybe because of high noise, maybe the person is like murmuring, maybe he is vocalizing or speaking in a very much loud, maybe you are not understanding his perception or the background. That's why the sound is very important. Many of the people used to speak in a very fast pace. I speak little fast, but many of the people speak with so much fast that you cannot understand. Sometimes the people speak so low that you are not like habitual of listening this much slow, so that becomes one of the difficulties, and the accent is that you may overcome by listening properly and giving more heed and more attention to the speaker. Then second most important stage of the comprehension is the grammar. As we are the inhabitant of South Asia, and that is why our grammar is entirely different from the grammar which is being designed and compiled by the Europeans. So we sometimes follow our own grammarians, but you cannot speak good English without having a strong grammar. Grammar means that you are failed to make the complex and compound sentences, and when someone speaks the compound sentences and the complex sentences, you fail to comprehend or understand that. It is one of the major problem. It can be overcome like listening to the news, English news channels, reading of the newspaper. It would help you a lot to make the construction of sentences as well. There is no any short way to the success, so this is the only way. The third is the experience. My dear student, most of the teachers sometimes quote an examples in the class on the basis of their own background knowledge and the own experiences, which sometimes create the problem for the student in their listening because they are not habitual and they do not have that much knowledge. So that is why the teacher must give an examples of some students level, of some local example, indigenous rather than exogenous. It would help them to understand the topic as well. So these are the few comprehension difficulties. Now discussing the ways of listening. Beta, there are two ways of listening. Number one is the global listening, and the number two is the discrete listening. Global listening, as I discussed earlier, that the global is the listening which we said for the sake of the pleasure. When you are listening to the music, you are solving your theorems. When you are solving your mathematical questions, you are not giving attention. Your parents are giving you advices, but you are just listening with your ear, but not like message is not going into the mind. That is said to be the global listening. The number two is the discrete listening. Discrete is the intensive listening, when you give an attention to the listening of an assignment at some mosque or at some airports, at the railway station. When you listen some kind of an announcement, particular announcement is said to be the ways of listening, and that is discrete listening. Now next topic which we discussed today as well are the stages of listening. Stages of listening means number one is perception and decoding. Perception means that when you perceive something, that what is going to happen next, and decoding means that you understand the message, either it is verbal or it is non-verbal. John Keats said that unheard melodies are more sweeter. And another psychologist said that the thing which is unsaid is hearing is something more important, which cannot be even said by your words. So this is the perception in which you understand something with your senses. The number two is prediction. Prediction in the simple word is to foresee. When you sometimes watch the movies, when you listen to the radio program, you may predict that the announcer or the VJ would say this thing, and that happens. So that it doesn't mean that you have some God powers, it means that you are predicting on the basis of your previous knowledge. So this is the prediction. The number 3 is STM. STM stands for short term memory. The short term memory means that when we listen something, that words come to our eardrums, and from these eardrums reach to the memory. And our memory is of two types, short term and the long term. In the short term memory, our memory stays in the form of some short sentences and the chunks. The number 4 is LTM. LTM stands for long term memory. As in the short term memory, the idea stays in the form of short sentences or the words or in the chunks. In the long term memory, the process is same, that the sentences may save in the form of small words in the chunks, but it resides in your unconscious, and whenever you need the memories and some ideas come in the foggy form, or you may close eyes, it may come in the black and white form. It is a complete psychology, we may not discuss it, but this memory is said to be long term memory, and your childhood memories are sometimes in a black and white, unconsciously reside in your back of your mind, and this is called long term memory. The number 5th is responses. As in the communication model, we discusses the feedback. So responses is another replacement of the feedback. Like whenever, suppose in the class, if I am delivering a lecture and suddenly if I ask any one of you, like, give me the answer of this question, and your expressions are so obvious, yes ma'am, oh sorry ma'am, I was not mentally present, I did not listen. So this means that your responses are very much weak. You were present physically here but mentally not. So this is the weak responses, and the active responses are very much important if you want to make your listening more good. So the last topic which we discussed today is that how to overcome the problems of listening. So my dear students, I am going to share my few experiences on the basis of which you can make your listening more good, as I have experienced and I have made. Number 1 is listen. Listen, listen and listen. So there is no other way. What to listen? Listen to the radio programs, listen to the news. Sometimes if you want to make your listening more good about the foreigners, like watch CNN, close your eyes and just listen what the announcer and what your newscaster is saying, and then write down the words. In IELTS there is also a module of listening in which they just play an audio. You have to listen what the speaker is saying and write down the words or the sentences. So these chunks and small sentences it understand to help your listening more good. The second most important thing, that if you are habitual of watching the English movies, do watch English movies with having the subtitle in the down, and when you read the subtitles, you will see that what the actor or actress is saying. It will help you a lot to improve your listening. Number 3 is the dictation. Take dictation from your teacher, from your elders at home. Number 4 is the transformation exercise. Do conversate with each other, do participate in debate, because you cannot get knowledge by lying on the simple bed. So this was the lecture for today. As we discuss the topic listening. Stay home, stay safe and follow the video lectures. Your assignments will be provided in your WhatsApp group. Till then, Allah Hafiz.